If you've been training hard for months, maybe even a year, and you still look basically the same in the mirror, it's not your genetics, it's not your metabolism, it's not that your body just doesn't respond to training. It's one of a few very specific fixable things. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which one is most likely yours and exactly what to do about it. I'm not going to give you 10 random reasons and tell you to just work harder. What I'm going to do is rank the biggest muscle building mistakes from most to least common, show you the actual science behind each one, and give you a clear way to figure out which one applies to you. Most people watching this video are stuck on one of the first two things I'm about to cover. Let's find out if you are. Here's the real problem with most content on this topic. People throw protein, sleep, supplements, workout splits, genetics, stress, hormones, and cardio into one giant list and treat everything as equally important. It isn't. They're not equally likely to be your problem. If you've been spinning your wheels for months, there's an overwhelming chance your issue is one of the first couple things we're about to cover. The other stuff matters too, but not nearly as much and not nearly as often. Let's start with the biggest one. The single most common reason people don't build muscle, especially if you're newer to training, is not eating enough protein. I know that sounds simple. I know you've heard it before. But consistently, when people track their actual intake for the first time, they're surprised by how far off they are from what they actually need. Here's the basic biology. Training creates the stimulus. It's the signal to your body that it needs to adapt. But protein is what provides the actual building blocks your body uses to repair and build muscle tissue afterward. Without enough protein, you're asking your body to build a house without enough bricks. The training is just tearing things down with nothing to rebuild with. For most lifters, 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day is the practical evidence-based target. To put that in practical terms, if you weigh 80 kilograms, about 175 pounds, you need somewhere between 128 and 176 grams of protein per day, not per meal, per day. Research consistently shows that around 1.6 grams per kilogram per day is sufficient to maximize muscle protein synthesis for most people. Higher intakes in that range can help in specific situations, if you're in a calorie deficit, if you're more advanced, or if you're doing a lot of volume. Here's where people mess up. They have one protein shake after training and think they've handled it. One shake doesn't fix a full day of undereating. Your daily total matters far more than any individual meal. That said, how you distribute it does matter too. Aim for roughly 0.4 grams per kilogram per meal, which for most people means somewhere between 25 and 40 grams per eating occasion. That's roughly the amount your body needs per sitting to fully trigger muscle protein synthesis. If you've never deliberately tracked your protein intake for even 3 or 4 days, that's the very first thing I'd fix. You might be shocked at the gap. Second most common reason, you're working hard, but you're not actually progressing. Those two things are completely different, and confusing them is one of the most common mistakes in the gym. You can leave every session exhausted, soaked in sweat, feeling like you worked your hardest, and still give your muscles almost no reason to grow. Because muscles don't grow because you felt tired. They grow because they were placed under demands they weren't fully prepared for, which forces your body to adapt and come back stronger. That process is called progressive overload, and without it, you can train consistently for years and look almost exactly the same. Here's what trips people up. They hear progressive overload and assume it means adding weight every single workout. It doesn't. It can mean adding weight. It can mean doing more reps with the same weight. It can mean adding more total sets over time. It can mean improving your technique so your target muscle is doing more of the work. It can mean increasing your range of motion. Any measurable improvement in the demands you're placing on the muscle counts. What doesn't count is doing the same thing you've been doing for 3 months because it feels comfortable. If you don't currently track your training, even just a note in your phone with weights and reps, you have no real way to know if you're progressing. You're guessing. Get a system. It doesn't have to be complicated. Write down what you lifted this week. Try to beat it next week. That's the whole thing. And here's something that trips people up specifically. They keep switching programs every 4 to 6 weeks because they heard a new one was better, or they're bored, or they saw something on YouTube. Every time you switch, you reset your ability to track progress on those specific exercises. You never find out what actually works for you because you never stay consistent long enough to find out. Pick a reasonable program, track your lifts, and run it long enough to actually get meaningful data. Most people would do far better staying on a decent program for 6 months than jumping between perfect programs every few weeks. Third, your training volume might be off, and this is somewhere people tend to make mistakes in both directions. Some people barely do enough to actually stimulate meaningful growth. Others are spending 2.5 hours a day absolutely destroying themselves, wondering why they're tired all the time and not seeing results. For most natural lifters, roughly 10 to 20 challenging quality sets per muscle group per week is a productive range. Not sloppy sets where you coast through with comfortable weight, but sets where you're genuinely pushing close to your limit for that exercise. If you're newer to training, you'll often see solid results at the lower end of that range, closer to 6 to 12 sets per muscle per week, because your body responds to relatively modest stimulus when it isn't adapted to training yet. The important thing to note is that more isn't automatically better. Past a certain point, more volume just means more recovery demand without additional growth benefit. If you're consistently sore for 5 or 6 days, sleeping poorly, and not feeling fresh in your sessions, more volume is almost certainly not what you need. Fourth, and this one is probably the most consistently underestimated, recovery. Your muscles don't grow while you're in the gym. They grow after you leave. Training is the stimulus. Recovery is when your body actually does the work of repairing and adapting. And sleep is by far the most powerful recovery tool you have access to. And it costs nothing. Consistent, adequate sleep, somewhere in the 7 to 9 hour range for most adults, supports testosterone production, growth hormone release, muscle protein synthesis, and next day training performance. Research on sleep restriction and muscle recovery is actually quite stark. Even short periods of serious sleep deprivation can temporarily reduce anabolic hormone levels and impair muscle protein synthesis. Some studies have shown testosterone drops of close to 25% after a single night of inadequate sleep. If you're training 5 days a week, eating enough protein, progressing your training, but consistently sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night, recovery is almost certainly your actual bottleneck. More training won't help. More protein won't help. Sleep will. Before I get into myths, I want to address the elephant in the room, supplements. Because if you're watching this video and you've been trying to figure out why you're not building muscle, there's a decent chance you've already bought something. A pre-workout, a fat burner, a testosterone booster, some special amino acid blend. Here's the honest answer. For most people, supplements are not the bottleneck. Creatine is the most well-studied performance supplement in existence, and it genuinely does help. It's worth using. Protein powder is useful if you're not hitting your daily protein target through food. Everything else, you'd get more out of sleeping an extra hour. The supplement industry is enormous because supplements are easier to sell than discipline and consistency. They're not why you're not building muscle. Now let's knock out a few myths that keep a lot of people stuck in patterns that don't serve them. If I'm not sore after a workout, it didn't work. This one is completely wrong, and it causes people to constantly chase muscle soreness as the goal, which usually means changing exercises every session so your body never adapts. Soreness is just a sign that your body experienced something unfamiliar, specifically that your muscles did a lot of eccentric work under load. You can build real, meaningful muscle with almost no soreness at all once your body adapts to a program. Judge your workouts by performance progress, not by how hard it is to walk the next day. I need to dirty bulk to build muscle. No, there is no requirement to get fat in order to build muscle. Beginners and people returning after time off can often build muscle and simultaneously lose fat, especially if they have excess body fat to draw on. Even for more advanced lifters, small calorie surpluses, a few hundred calories above maintenance, are typically sufficient. A massive surplus mostly adds fat, not extra muscle. Cardio kills your gains. This is massively overstated. Reasonable cardio, a few sessions of moderate intensity exercise per week, fits alongside muscle building just fine for most people. Problems start when cardio volume gets extreme, when calorie intake is too low to support both the cardio and the muscle building, or when recovery can't keep up with total training demand. Cardio, done sensibly, is not your enemy. I've been lifting for 3 months. Why don't I look different? Because visible body composition change takes longer than social media has conditioned people to expect. Real muscle building is a months to years process, not a weeks process. If you're getting stronger in the gym, recovering well, and consistently hitting your protein, the changes are happening. The mirror is just slow. Most people quit before consistency has had enough time to compound into visible results. All right, so here's the order of operations I'd walk through before you change anything else about your program. First, am I consistently hitting my protein target every day? Not just on training days, not just when I remember, but every day. Second, am I actually progressing in my training over time? Can I demonstrate that I'm doing more than I was doing 6 to 8 weeks ago? Third, am I doing enough quality training volume per week without my recovery falling apart? Fourth, am I getting enough sleep on a consistent basis? Work through that list in order. Whichever one you hit first is almost certainly your actual bottleneck. Not all four equally, just work down from the top. Fix that one thing first before adding anything else. Building muscle is genuinely not that complicated, but it's also not as fast or as glamorous as the fitness industry makes it look. It's about doing the fundamentals consistently and well over a long enough time period. Eat enough protein, progress your training, get your volume right, recover properly, give your body time to respond. Get those 4 things right, and you are already miles ahead of most people who spend years training without a real plan. If protein was the one on that list that hit home for you, the next video covers exactly how to calculate your target based on your body weight, goals, and training frequency, including the specific foods that make hitting your target actually practical. I'll see you there. And if this video helped you see something in your training you hadn't seen clearly before, drop it in the comments. I read every one of them. It helps me know what to cover next, and it helps other people in the same situation find the answers they need. Let's get jacked, son.